Hey everyone, Jackie here, and welcome back to the Women Kickball's YouTube channel. And in case you haven't heard or you've been living under a rock, obviously the U.S. Women's National Team are out of the World Cup tournament, which is super crazy and unheard of, as this is their earliest exit. So today I'm going to be diving into some of the different components as to what happened during this tournament and looking ahead at what's next. So before this tournament, the U.S. Women's National Team actually had 8 wins this year, but being that it is a World Cup and they were looking to potentially get their 3rd consecutive World Cup championship win, this is obviously a big deal and they really needed to step it up. And so throughout this tournament, we saw a lot of criticism towards head coach Vlatko Andonovski, as some of these lineups were just pretty repetitive and you had a lot of players that were just underutilized in the tournament. And along with this, you also had some players who were playing out of position, like Julie Ertz, Emily Sonnet, who actually ended up coming into the midfield in the final game and did a really great job. So some of those things like that, where some of these player changes and substitutions should have been made so that way the U.S. wasn't struggling throughout the tournament. So throughout this tournament, they actually only scored 4 goals in 4 games. And so their opening game was a 3-0 win against Vietnam, but after that things were just not doing good, as they then had 3 consecutive draws. And of course, this final game against Sweden was just super intense as it went to penalty kicks. However, when you look at, for example, their last World Cup in 2019, the U.S. Women's National Team actually had scored 26 goals throughout the tournament, which was a record in FIFA history as well. So going from 26 goals in the last tournament to 4 goals and then struggling throughout the tournament for results definitely just shows you that in terms of tactics, I don't think it was fully there because they had so many good players. And again, I think the bench was just underutilized in this situation. So coming into this game, Sweden was already doing really well throughout the tournament as they only had 1 goal scored against them. And they actually had won all of their games so far, whereas in the contrary, the U.S. had actually just really struggled to finish that final touch in the box. Although the U.S. were more organized in this game, it was something where they shouldn't have waited until the pressure really fell on in order to make those changes. And so that's where I think these substitutions and just roster structure needed to be made earlier in the tournament. Sweden also had some really sharp passing in the game as well, which is how they were able to hold off the U.S. And then of course that combined with their goalkeeper, who was just absolutely crushing it, is really what made this game go into the final minutes of overtime and then of course into penalty kicks. Throughout this tournament, Vlatko has obviously received a lot of criticism from fans and even former players like Carly Lloyd and different analysts as well. And so something that I thought was interesting that he said in the post-game press conference was this, quote, "In terms of the criticism, now it's time for the criticism. Now you can say whatever you want. When I took this job, I knew there would be times when I would be misunderstood. I knew I would make decisions that would negatively affect people that I love, but it just comes with the job." And although Vlatko was actually asked about his future with U.S. soccer following the game, he decided to focus his attention on saying just how gutted he was for the players, and especially these young ones who just felt like there was so much going on in this moment. And one of the other sad things about this, at least from my perspective, is that you look at players like Ashley Sanchez, Alana Cook, who are just really high caliber players, and they didn't even see minutes in their very first World Cup. Additionally, you also had players like Sofia Huerta and then Christy Mewis, who literally came on in the final minute or so of overtime just to take the penalty kick, which, I mean, she made it, which was great. But some of these players should have gotten a lot more playing time versus getting little to 0 minutes at all. And although this result against Sweden was just really rough, the U.S. is actually already in talks about what's going to be coming next. So here's a statement that U.S. Soccer shared about where it's currently at in terms of the future of the program. So, while we are all disappointed that our journey has ended at the Women's World Cup, we want to thank the players, coaches, and staff for their remarkable effort, and to our fans both in the stands and at home for their unwavering support. As we always do after a major tournament, we will conduct a review to identify areas of improvement and determine our next steps. As we look ahead, we embrace the hard work necessary to become champions again. So later this week, U.S. Soccer will actually be sharing more insight on this, specifically from Matt Crocker, who is the U.S. Soccer sporting director. And so it'll be interesting to see what comes from this in terms of where's Vlatko's position with the team and especially what's coming next as the U.S. look to prepare for the 2024 Olympics in Paris. But before we actually get to the Olympics, the U.S. already have another set of friendlies coming up next month actually against South Africa, who made their debut in the World Cup tournament as well. So although this loss was super tough and heartbreaking for the U.S., we'll actually be finding out later this week whether or not Vlatko will be coaching those upcoming friendlies next month. If you found this video helpful, it'd be great if you can give it a thumbs up or follow here on YouTube as well. And for more additional soccer updates, be sure to follow Women Kickballs on these social media channels to get the latest soccer news for free.